So what we're going to talk about today is how can you unlock innovation by tapping into the collective potential of teams, whether that's your team, whether you're a project leader, whether you're a student working across different teams. How can you unlock that potential in your team? And this, Steve Jobs was one of the greatest innovators of our time. And he said, great things in business are never done by one person. They're done by a team of people. And there's so much in our world that needs changing, that needs improving, that needs innovating. And together and with our ideas and creativity, we can make the world a better place for us and also the future generations. So Patricio's already done a little bit of an introduction. So just to add a few other things, if you hear an accent with my English, it's because I come from a beautiful country called New Zealand. But I've spent many, many years traveling the world. And I bring those 10 years of international marketing and product development in telecom and tech. And I used to work in this office over here next to the Ángel in Mexico City, where I worked for a company called Avantel, which was launching the first competing telecom products into Mexico. Since then, I've had 20 years as a global executive coach and specializing in leadership development. And as Patricio mentioned, I'm the founder of the Creativity app, which was really my kind of innovation project, my laboratory to test all my ideas and all my techniques. And interestingly enough, over the last few years, I've really developed a specialism now in the space industry, because as you can imagine, there's no more innovative place than getting us to the moon, Mars, and beyond. And so I'm a leadership instructor with the Space Foundation University, and I'll be sharing some of the stuff that I've developed for them. I'm also a mentor for the UK Space Agency's accelerators and the United Nations Space for Women. And as Patricio mentioned, I'm a member of Forbes Coaches Council and write for Forbes as well. And I'll be sharing some articles with you today that I think will be really useful. But let's look at the life of an innovator, the leadership journey. So you as an individual, the fact that you're on this call, the fact that you have an interest in innovation is you are an innovator. So you, wherever you go, you bring those ideas, you challenge the status quo, you perhaps disrupt things as well. So you are an individual. But then you start working with other people. So you start managing other people or working as a project team or a cross-functional hybrid team. And suddenly you've got to help unlock that creativity and those ideas in other people. And then ultimately, as an innovator, as a leader of innovation, you have an incredible impact on the people around you. So you not only have to lead your team, but you also have to influence key stakeholders, interact with users. And so one of the common elements of all of these three options is you. So what makes a great innovation leader? So who's going to be brave and type into the chat? What do you think are the qualities that make someone a great innovation leader? What do you think? So just type into the chat. So we've got quite a quiet group today. So some of the qualities of a great innovative leader is to have that vision, to be courageous, to be creative in their thinking, to be a good collaborator, and also to have that kind of calm resilience as well, to step into the uncertainty. And so what we've developed is for our kind of coaching programs is what we call the TEAM model, which basically is it gives you 4 different levers to unlock innovation in teams, because you could be the most innovative person on the planet, But to get things done, you've got to influence, you've got to work with others, you've got to collaborate with others. So how can you unlock that passion for innovation? How can you bring out the best ideas in other people as well? So the four levers are, first of all, the T stands for talent. What knowledge and skills and experience does each person in the team bring? The second lever is engagement. So how can we get everyone motivated and inspired and build a culture in a team that's based on trust and highly collaborative? The third is alignment. So we have a big vision, but how can we get everyone aligned around that? No matter what the distractions are, no matter what the curveballs are, how can we get people to align around that common vision? And last but not least, there's no point in having brilliant ideas if you don't do anything with them. So the M stands for how can we manage innovation? As a leader, how can you stay on track? How can you manage the people around you to deliver and to implement? And you'll see a QR code here. I've got some resources from this presentation that I've put on a web page. If you scan the QR code, or I've just put the link in the chat, you'll be able to download these as a guide. So we're going to dive into each one of these levers now, starting with talent. Okay, and so when we talk about talent, it's how can you leverage your team's capabilities? We're going to look at two things. First of all, what are the strengths of your team? And how do you understand the personality dynamics, and how can you get the best out of each individual based on their personality preferences? There's quite a bit more that's included in each of these levers, but these are the two things that I wanted to share with you today. So when we look at the strengths, what I find fascinating from 20 years of coaching is that often leaders don't really know the full extent of the experience, the skills, the capabilities that they have in their team. They often just look, to the last 2 years, maybe 3 years. But each one of you brings such a richness when it comes to experience and how you can contribute your perspective, your knowledge, your experience. And so as a leader, how can you really tap into that? And the first step is to actually know. So thinking about, to put this into practice, thinking about a challenge that you're facing at the moment, something where you need to be innovative, think about what knowledge do you bring? What is unique about the knowledge you bring? So your expertise, your experience, your awareness. What knowledge do you bring? Second of all, what skills do you bring to this particular challenge? Is it communication? Is it ability to write algorithms in a spreadsheet? So what capabilities and competencies? Is it the fact that you're able to visually represent concepts using design? What are the capabilities and the competencies that you bring to this particular challenge? The third piece is your personality. So what is unique about your personality, the way that you are, your authenticity? How does that really help solve this challenge? And last, it's about learning style. So how do you like to learn? Do you like to watch YouTube videos? Do you prefer to listen to podcasts? Do you prefer to just grab pieces of paper and start writing and start making things? Really understanding what your learning style can be really helpful for how you get the best out of your own creativity. So one thing I want you to think about is, if you have a team or you're working in a team, how well do you know your team? Do you know what their expertise and experience is? Are you really aware of all the skills that they can bring? And how does their unique personality contribute? And what do you think their learning style is? And when I'm working with leaders, it's really interesting to go back to what they studied at university, because sometimes they might be in sort of like a senior VP role in operations, but at university they studied archaeology or medieval history, something quite oblique. But it's amazing because you can draw on the same thinking, the same patterns, bringing that way of thinking into how you innovate today. So have a think about this in terms of how well do you really understand your team, and how can you leverage the diversity in your team as well, because each person bringing their unique knowledge, skills, personality and learning style, you bring that together and you get a really mixed soup of innovation. And the second part of talent is to understand your personality. So I did have my first personality test done when I lived in Mexico, and it was absolutely eye-opening. And I'm certified now in a couple of personality tests. This is one that I really recommend you try out. It's called the Lumina Spark, and they've got a free app where you can have a taster. What I find fascinating about understanding about personalities is it really helps as a leader. How can you connect with that person? How can you build trust by adapting the way that you approach them? So yeah, in the link I've provided, I've given you the links for downloading the free app so that you can give it a go, because you're going to come up with what we call a splash. And in the Luminous Spark, it explores 8 different aspects, 24 qualities and 4 colors, but we're just looking at the 8 aspects. So it says, are you inspiration driven, or are you more discipline driven? Are you big picture thinking? Are you down to earth? Are you extroverted or introverted? Are you more outcome focused, or are you more people focused? And I've written an article about how you can use these 8 aspects to be a better innovator yourself, and also to help unlock that innovation in others. And I've included that in the resources, because often when I run programs, people will say, I'm not creative. I don't come up with good ideas, because people think that to be a great innovator, you have to be a big picture thinker. But actually, someone who's down to earth, who loves diving into the data, looking at the analysis, when they look at the data and the trends, they can often spot what we call a sweet spot, where that is the absolute thing, the best place to innovate. Someone who's discipline driven really likes processes. You can think of a person who's quite organized, follows plans and processes. They can be incredibly innovative by mapping out the customer journey, looking for pain points and looking at ways to solve those pain points. That approach would probably annoy someone who's very extroverted, because this person just loves going out and having coffee and talking to people and having brainstorming sessions. Someone who's outcome focused doesn't have much patience. They just want to do stuff. So the outcome focused people who are strong in this are brilliant at making a prototype, putting it in the market, getting user feedback, reiterating and refining. Someone who's people focused they're brilliant for spending a day in the life of their key user, connecting with them, doing those one-on-one interviews. Someone who's inspiration driven needs to have time and space so that they can kind of meditate and follow their nose and explore different things that they're interested in. And someone who's more introverted, they tend to, maybe they get their inspiration from listening to a podcast or reading a book and doing some mind mapping. So I highly recommend that you give this Lumina Splash a go. Look at your personality and see what kind of innovator you are, because that's the best way to unlock better ideas, by understanding that, but also appreciating that if you're in a team, you're going to get people who like to be innovative in different ways. And so as a leader, being able to understand that and manage that, you can get the best ideas, the best solutions out of the people around you. So, in terms of talent, here are some questions that you can be asking. Who are we and what's our potential? What knowledge and experience do we bring? What skills do we have as a collective? How do our personalities work together? What's the best roles for each one of us? And how can we leverage diversity in the team to deliver those innovative results? So that's the first lever, the talent. How can you leverage talent? The second one is engagement. Engagement is so important, especially when it comes to ideas, to have that sense of trust in a team. I'm sure you've been in a team before where there wasn't that level of trust. And did you actually contribute your best ideas? I know I didn't when I was in that situation. So in engagement, we look at developing psychological safety, understanding what motivates people, and there's going to be conflict. And conflict's actually quite good for creative progress. And Google did a study. They studied 115 different project teams to say, well, what makes them high performing, highly innovative? And the one thing, the top thing that came out was the teams that were highly innovative had high levels of what they call psychological safety. And this is the feeling that if you're in a group, if you contribute a controversial idea, then there won't be negative risks or negative reprisals from that. And this is what they discovered, is that in the teams that were highly innovative, it was less about who was on the team and more about how the team worked together. So in building your team, really be mindful of what is the level of trust and what can you do to build trust. And I remember from my days working in Mexico City was we would go out to lunch together. Normally the Anglo way is to sit at your computer and eat your lunch at your desk, but we used to go out to lunch together for an hour, hour and a half, and that really helped build that trust and that cohesion. Daniel Pink came up, wrote a book about this called Drive. It's really fascinating. But when you're talking about people contributing their best ideas and being courageous, stepping outside their comfort zone, what are they driven by? So someone who's driven by autonomy needs to feel a sense of freedom. They need to be able to control what they do, when they do it, how they do it, and who they work with. So someone who's got high levels of autonomy and loves that will bring their best ideas. Other people want to become really expert at this something, so they want to improve and become an expert, and that's what motivates them to grow and to step outside their comfort zone. Other people are more driven by purpose. So one of the reasons I've developed a lot of experience in the space industry is because, I'm passionate about helping our leaders get us to the moon, the Mars, and beyond. So very purpose driven. So have a think about yourself. If you had to pick one of these and say, that is the thing that motivates me the most, which one would it be? And make sure that you have a lot of that in your daily life, but also understanding that different team members will be motivated by different elements. And so the next part is, just bear with me. There's always going to be conflict. And one of the things often as a leader is, if there's conflict, sometimes you can think, well, I'm not a good leader there shouldn't be conflict. But for those of you who do creative things, whether you paint, take photography, or write, you know there's often a lot of frustration when it comes to creativity. But often that frustration is the point of a breakthrough. So when it comes to leading innovation, don't shy away from the conflict. And when there is conflict, there'll always be a zone of agreement. Everyone often focuses on the zone of disagreement, but actually focus on the zone of agreement. What do we agree on? What don't we agree on? And then there's often a huge portion of assumptions, rumors, ambiguities. And so when it comes to conflict, don't run away from it, but how can you lead through it? So when it comes to that gray zone, how can you be asking questions to clarify and get more clarity on the gray zone and moving that into the zone of agreement? And then by the other side, look at that zone of disagreement, because often it's people with completely different perspectives. Each one thinks that they're right, but maybe there's a reason, maybe there's a benefit in looking at those different perspectives, because you might find that disruptive idea comes out of this zone of disagreement. So in terms of engagement's hugely important to get the best ideas out of people, for them to feel safe contributing those ideas. So some questions are like, how can we collaborate more effectively? What motivates and energizes us? What's our level of commitment? How do we deal with conflict? What happens if one of us becomes disengaged? And kind of what are our norms and behaviors? And then we come to the A. So we've tapped into the talent. We've got a really highly engaged team. Where are we going? So with alignment, it's important about shaping a compelling vision. And then I'm going to share with you the 3 horizons strategy. So in terms of that, compelling vision is so important in innovation, because there's going to be lots of frustration, lots of resistance. So how can you keep focused on that end goal? Because it sets a clear direction. Everyone knows where they're going. It focuses on what's important. It provides that North Star. It motivates people and enables them to work towards that common purpose, and brings a sense of control, especially when there's a lot of uncertainty and ambiguity. But most importantly, it aligns people's energy, time, and their actions. And one of the strategy models I used way back when I was doing product management in Mexico, it comes from the alchemy of growth, Baghai, Coley, and White, and it's the 3 horizons. And so when you're developing products, when you're developing concepts or services, it's really quite a helpful model to use. So in a horizon 3, this is the embryonic stage. So what is it we want to create? What is that vision? Then in horizon 1, this is the core. This is what we've already got, what's already established, the current business. And then in horizon 2, it's like, well, to get from horizon 1 to horizon 3, what do we want to build? And this is the emerging. And so I'm sharing with you how we use this for the Brain Sparker app. So horizon 3, just imagine, right? You've got your VR glasses on. You have your own personal brainstorming creative coach, and they help you one-on-one any time of the day or night to think creatively, to solve your problems, and they're your best brainstorming buddy. Okay. That's the vision. And they speak your language, whatever language you speak. So where are we today? We've got a random prompt app. It's got thousands of questions, images, and words. And these are designed to trigger you to think differently. But it's quite a static kind of concept. And so in terms of Horizon 2, this is what we're building, is how can we build in AI capabilities with like a brainstorming buddy that's a bot. And when I first wrote this, it was just a bot via Messenger, but now we've got Chat GPT. So the potential to bring in Horizon 2 has just been accelerated. But that's how we're going to get to this embryonic. And so thinking about the challenge that you're facing, how can you, what is the big vision? Where are you today? What have you got today? And what do you need to build to get you to that vision? And the 3 Horizons is a fantastic model. And so here are some coaching questions for alignment. Where are we going and why? What's our vision and purpose? How does each person's goals align to that bigger vision? What's our process for making decisions, and how do we hold people to account? And given that things change, how do we adapt and realign around that vision as we evolve? And that brings us back to the 4th one, which is management, measuring progress and maximizing performance. Because much as we would love to stay in the ideas and the potential and brainstorming, actually, the reason we're doing this is to make a difference, to have an impact, and to improve people's lives, improve the way we live, improve profitability and growth for businesses as well. So we need to set smart innovation goals. And then as I'm a coach, I highly recommend you develop coaching skills, because these can really help unlock people's creative potential. So I'm sure you know your SMART goals. So it's really important for those innovation initiatives to be really clear about what is the ideal outcome. How do you know you've been successful? So what's the measure? It needs to be relatively attainable, even though it can be kind of like blue sky thinking, but it has to be attainable within certain timeframes. And it's got to be useful. It's got to be relevant. It's got to make a difference or improve things in some way. And there does need to be some sort of timeline. So maybe a deadline, maybe milestones, so that you're moving forward and you're making progress. And then adopting a coaching approach. This is one of the biggest shifts, I think, that can be quite challenging for leaders, because you can have a directive approach or you can have non-directive. So thinking about your natural style, when someone comes to you with a problem, do you tell them the answer? Do you instruct them what to do? Do you give advice? This is all being quite directive. Do you offer guidance? Do you give feedback? Do you make suggestions? Or do you start asking questions to help them think about their own problem and solutions? You can use summarizing, and you can use listening to really understand what is that problem to be solved. And so one of the key skill changes for leaders of innovation is to move from pushing your solution on someone else and more like pulling them, helping that person solve their own problem. And so there's 4 skills that I would recommend that you start developing or enhancing if you're already good. Having that empowering mindset of really believing that that person does have the answers somewhere in their head. They just need guidance, they need the coaching, they need the motivation and the creative stimulation to sort of tap into that. So believing that someone can come up with their own ideas. Really listening, not listening to answer or listening to give a solution, but actually listening to what is the real problem you're solving. Most people will not tell you in the first sentence. It takes time to peel back the layers. But what is the rational reason? What is the emotional reason why they've got that problem? And then using reflecting back or summarizing or paraphrasing really helps you clarify that you have understood and the person feels valued and heard. And then asking powerful questions. And so as coaches, we tend to use questions that are open, often starting with what and how. So I'm just going to do a quick demonstration of the app, BrainSparker app. So just bear with me while I share. Okay, so this is the BrainSparker app. It's been in the market for 10 years. And credit to our designer. This is the original design from 10 years ago. It needs an upgrade and we will be developing it shortly. But our designer did a fantastic job. So in the BrainSparker app, it's free to download. There is an upgrade, but everything I'm showing you today is free. We've got some courses, mini courses, but this is really what BrainSparker is about, is the card decks that we have. So I'm showing you a free one. So I want you to think about a challenge that you're currently facing. And I'm going to throw some coaching questions to you. So there's 150 coaching questions. I don't know which one you're going to get. So where could you push yourself more? With this, a challenge that you're facing, where are you staying in your comfort zone, and where could you push yourself more? So that's one question. Second question, when you think about a challenge that you're facing, what actions are you most nervous about taking, and what stops you from taking those steps? So have a think about that. And the last one. What assumptions are you making? And in coaching, we love using numbers. So when you think about a challenge that you're facing, what are 2 assumptions that you're making? Okay, so this comes from the Activate card deck, which is a free card deck based on coaching questions around the Grow coaching model. Okay, so just bringing things to a close. We've talked about the coaching. I've shared with you the app. And so when we're talking about managing innovation, it's like, as a leader, how can everyone stay on track? What are your measures of performance? What processes do you need to track, or how are you going to track your progress, and how are you going to communicate with each other? So what are you going to use? Slack? Are you going to use MS Teams to do that? And what happens if you miss goals? What's going to happen, and how do you celebrate your successes? So that's the T.E.A.M model. As I say, scan the QR code, and I've put the link into the chat. It's a fantastic framework to look at. Well, if I want to unlock more innovation in my team, which one of these would I focus on over the next 30 days? Would I tap more into the talent? Would I really focus on building that engagement and cohesiveness? Do I really need to sort of get everyone aligned around a common vision? Or do I really need to get down and get tracking and be more sort of disciplined around tracking and managing performance? So I encourage you to just pick one of these to really focus on over the next 30 days. And I guarantee that you will unlock greater ideas, you will create more engagement and motivation, and you will be able to tap into the collective potential of your team to be more innovative. So thank you very much to CEDIM and the team for having me here today to share my expertise. And I wanted to finish off with a quote by Helen Keller, because alone we can do so little, but together we can do so much. And the fact that you're here and you're interested in innovation, you're interested in bringing ideas that make your world better and our world better, the world needs us. So I wish you all the very best, and I look forward to learning more about the innovations that you bring into the world. So good luck from me.